Venerable Lamso gave a lovely testimonial to community life the other day, and I'm going to give another side of it. She also quoted, it's the Rock Tumbler Survival Kit. That's what I want to present today. As we said in the request for training, because I'm not perfect, I request the members of the community to support me in my training. Because others are not perfect, I will practice cultivating patience and compassion. All of us are like rocks in a tumbler. Together, we will smooth each other's rough edges and polish each other's so that we will become radiant gems who are wise and joyful and who work for the benefit of all sentient beings. Doesn't that sound lovely? So light. Did you collect rocks when you were a kid? Yeah, I did. My grandfather had cigar boxes, which I love the smell of, and boxes full of rocks. And I lived in North Georgia, where there's lots of naturally occurring quartz. You get quartz crystal and then quartz rock, right? So, and they're beautiful. And because they're in this North Georgia red-orange dirt, when you pull them out, even though they're totally rough, and quartz can be quite sharp. You can really hurt yourself with a piece of quartz, or hurt somebody else, or your brothers and sisters. There's also the vein of this orange-red dirt where you've dug it up, so it's kind of marbled in that way, so they're very beautiful. So I wasn't geologically interested at all. It was just the beauty and the shape of it. And I've collected rocks over the years, Warren River rocks and heart-shaped rocks for a while. Oh, look at this little heart-shaped rock. That's so cool. That was on my, quote, altar. So, and the time when I was ordained, Venerable Minja, who was the acharya at my ordination, gave us all a little string of, I think probably semi-precious stones that were partly smoothed as a gift that says, here you are, you're like rocks in a tumbler. This will help, the community will help smooth you out. I believe I gave it to you, to Venerable Yeshe when she took her Shikshamana ordination. So to pass on that gift and to pass on the metaphor. So the rock tumbler image was quite pleasing for me. But you know how a rock tumbler works, right? People not know how a rock tumbler works? You don't know how. So it's like you can imagine like a drum, a round can thing, right? And then there's a lid, throw these rocks in and you start cranking it. And it goes around and around and around and around and around, like samsara. Never ceasing till the arm who's cranking it or the motor now that's cranking it, it can go on forever. And it is through the interaction of the rocks on each other that the rocks are smoothed. So even I had this image, these are mostly beads, but I had to find what I could. I had this image of like shiny, beautiful, colored, semi-precious stones coming together. These came out of whatever that mandala jar is downstairs. So there's a few polished rocks. I don't know if you can see them. They're shiny, they're nice, they feel good to the touch. That was my idea. I listened to a talk of Reverend Master Mako gave to an EML in 2005, which was beautiful. I recommend everyone re-listen to this, but she talks about this, and she says, we start off as real rough. This is how we actually start. Just plain old, this color kind of rock. We're all like this. And even rough rocks are nice. The kind I picked in Georgia were rough. They had smooth models, but you could see the beauty in them. But then she says, but then you put these rough rocks into a community of trainees. Well, what? The Benedictines also use this metaphor of rocks in a tumbler. And a Benedictine nun says one of the most difficult aspects of coming into a monastery is adjusting to community life. Why? Because people have no sense of what it means to live in community. And it doesn't matter who we are, where we've come from, what our experiences are, what we think we've done, we actually have no idea. how to live in monastic community. And that's part of the first thing that gets rubbed off. We think we come in a little bit shiny and we're all special. And we all do have something special. We all have our talents, we have our skills, we have the things we were recognized for out there, things that people applauded or we got awards for, whatever. We think we're going to be like this. And then we come in, and after a while, we bang around. Maybe it takes a long time. But one of the first things that comes off as we're getting around this rock tumbler is that the flakes of our veneer of specialness come off first. You ever seen somebody, again, I'm from the South, right? So you ever seen somebody whose fingernails are always done, but then they get kind of chipped? That look, especially in the 50s, really red fingernails with then chipped before they get redone. It's kind of like that. The shininess of our specialness gets chipped off. And it's not that we don't use our skills here. It's not that our talents aren't valued here. But the mind that says, I am the best at this one. Nobody here makes potato salad as well as I do. Nobody here knows how to make cornbread like I do. Nobody here has the organizing skill that I have. That mind is the one that gets knocked off. We may be using our organizing skill and we may continue to make potato salad, but after a while, it's just like everybody else. Plain old, ordinary rock. And, that's not that easy to live with. Then we really do start dealing with the rough edges. So you bang up against other people's afflictions. A long time before you realize that you're banging up against your own. It takes a while. We're kicking, we're screaming, we're resisting, we're at war with what is, we're at war with the schedule. I mean, everybody here right now, you're here for 18 days, but we are all in this rock tumbler. Venerable Children is in this rock tumbler. One day guests come into the rock tumbler. We're all in it together. And one of the interesting things about living community too is after you've been going around in the drum for a while, pum, 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 you've kind of gotten used to the edges of the people that you've been running up against. They open the door and throw in more rocks. And they all think they're shiny too. And they all think that your rough edges are the problem. So it's not like a one-time gig. It goes over and over and over and over and over and over and over. So one of the things that Venerable Children spoke about on this topic is that the whole idea about rocks and a tumbler polishing others is that we're able to see each other in ways that we can't see ourselves. And that's part of what the veneer is that we've been trying not to be seen. Or trying to be seen in a certain way. We've been trying to control how the world perceives us and how we perceive ourselves. And so to be able to be open to what other people's feedback is, whether it's direct or whether it's indirect, whether it's through their behavioral response to us or whether it's through their verbal response to us, whether what they think is true, what they're said is true or not. All of those ways are the ways that we bang up against each other. And what happens? We have to learn to look inside ourselves. When people point out stuff to us. That's why we're here. It's also our responsibility to point out things to other people. That seems to be easier than the first one. To receive the feedback with appreciation. And so forth. So our practice is to remain open and appreciative when other people point things out to us. And then here's what Reverend Mako says. We do this to soften our edges. We put down our armor. That's when we start to really accept that we're in the rock tumbler. When we start to put down the armor. When we start to put down our fists, our swords, our guns, the whole artillery, we let them go. And recognize that anything that we're clinging to anything that we're clinging to is an obstacle for the spiritual aspirations that brought us here in the first place. Everything. We want to control, we want to manipulate reality, we want our own wishes to be fulfilled, we want the monastery to change to suit our view. We impute motivations on people and think that that must be where they're coming from. So every one of those is a place of clinging that just through being in practice together will get knocked off. The amount of time it takes is up to us. Now, that said, it never ends. It never ends. It just keeps going, that thing. And there are times when it gets a little easier, and then sure enough, some piece cracks off and there's a whole new vein revealed, and oh God, here we go again. I've been in that lately. So Reverend Mako also says this is spiritually growing up. And there is nothing we can force. It's not like we can prepare ourselves not to feel this, not to have it be difficult. We can't. The more we defend, the more bumps we're putting on to be knocked off. The only thing that actually works is to open. And so this is part of the survival guide. These are the things that I think are most helpful. There's two big points. One is try to cultivate an assumption of goodwill. That sounds so simple. It sounds so reasonable. It is not. But we came here voluntarily. Presumably, we came here because we had a spiritual aspiration that felt like the monastery was a place to fulfill this longing, to fulfill this sense of fulfillment, of wishing to connect with something greater ourselves, to make our lives meaningful, to follow the Buddha's teachings. We come here with that longing, which is rare. We've already talked about how unique that is. And here we think, oh, I'm going to go to Sravasti Abbey for a month, a year, the rest of my life, in order to fulfill that longing voluntarily. Therefore, if we look around, we have to assume that everybody in the room shares that aspiration. That we have in common. There's no reason to doubt that. It's not that easy. Why would anybody come here if they didn't have that? It's also not that hard. We're the ones who make it hard. So the shared aspiration is an important point, and then that we have the assumption of goodwill. And the other one then is to look at what is the purpose of the monastery itself. Venerable Children said it this morning. The precepts, training guidelines exist to benefit us. Our teacher's guidance is to benefit us. When the Buddha spoke to Sudina, he made it clear, Venerable said this morning, we follow afflictions, the result is worse for us. The afflictions are our real enemy. So the Buddha spoke strongly to him out of compassion. Believe me, I'm speaking from experience, this does not come naturally. But if we come with the assumption of goodwill and the wish, the intent to develop that trust in both our own aspiration and the aspiration of the people who are guiding us, then we can kind of let go of that, all the things that we're defending in order to be able to accept this guidance. And then to do it in relationship to the community, we need to do the practices that cultivate love. That's the best part of the survival guide. Spend our time doing the loving kindness meditation with the people we live with. Yes, there are other people in the world who suffer. Who are we banging against in this rock tumbler? The people we live with. So practicing the loving kindness meditation, wishing kindness, wishing the causes of happiness, wishing them happiness. I will bring them happiness. If my mission today is to bring happiness to this community, do I behave differently than if my mission today is to get what I want? I do. Do I remember it all day? No. But I try. And we do try. And the more we learn them, that it changes our attitude. Meditating on the kindness of others is the other survival kit thing that I think is essential. Daily, daily, daily. Meditating on the kindness of others in the world, meditating on the kindness we've received in our life so that all our defenses and all our reasons, and nobody cares, that's my trip, nobody really cares. You know, to meditate against the long-held beliefs that we have, recognizing that there is so much kindness in our lives, we have benefited so much, and that every day we are the direct beneficiaries of the kindness from the people we live with. That's the other part of the assumption of goodwill to develop. Then there's always the thought training teachings. Whenever I meet a person of bad nature who is overwhelmed by negative energy and intense suffering, I will hold such a rare one dear as if I have found a precious treasure. Now, that verse could apply to somebody like our president, or it could apply to somebody like my Dharma sister office mate today. From very, very mildly irritating, oh, she's in a bad mood, but to me it's a big deal, or something major, you know, so we don't have to look for the ogres to apply that verse, is my point. We can use it with each other very gently. Then, this is my pitch again, take out the handout that Venerable Children gave, as far as I know, in the 1990s, maybe earlier, on the antidotes to the afflictions. Keep it on your puja table day and night. Read them, learn them. What are these afflictions? What are the antidotes to these afflictions? So that we really start to learn how to work with the issues ourselves. I've decided after looking at this talk, I'm going to print this out. Monday when I go to town to UU, I'm going to get some bound for this group. It will be my offering. So that everyone has a copy of these two. There's two. And the first one I don't find on the website anymore. Taking the ache out of attachment is pages and pages on meditations for how to deal with attachment. Then, oh, it's there with a different title. Okay, thank you. And then the other one is antidotes to the disturbing attitudes, and it goes through the whole range. So I used to give them out at winter retreats, but I saw that nobody ever used them, so I stopped. Some people use them, okay. But anyway, this is the other way to survive the rock tumbler in my personal view. So what's the payoff? What's the benefit of doing this? I mean, Venerable Lamso laid them out quite beautifully, actually, and there are many, and that's the talk of a whole nother BBC. But in short, you know, we share this journey with people who have that same aspiration. You go home, I just went home a few weeks ago, my family loves me. They don't have a clue what I'm doing. Not a clue. And that hurts, actually, a little bit. I wish they could. I'd love to give this to them, but I can't. Who do I share it with? You guys. Who understands? You guys. And I am going to cry. When your sister is dying, your community will make your lunch, will help you buy your ticket, will put you in the car, will say prayers for your sister and be on the phone. That's a beautiful benefit of surviving the rock tumbler. And it's just a tiny example. A tiny, tiny example. So it requires commitment. True. It requires, to be able to appreciate it, it really requires developing this assumption of goodwill. As long as we don't have that, we will fight it in every direction. Once we have that assumption of goodwill, even somebody's not skillful in giving feedback, whatever, we understand after we've gotten over our irritation, our pain, and oh, they shamed me, they hate me, blah, blah, blah. After we've gotten through that little string of complaints, we can recognize this person actually cares about me and maybe has something of value to say that I could think about. Without that assumption of goodwill, this place is hell. I really think so. So that's got to come first. Then comes our antidotes, so we know how to deal with ourselves. And then as I was looking up rock tumblers in general for this, I found something kind of funny. It's a warning from a people who sell an electric rock tumbler. It says, remember, when buying a rock tumbler, you get exactly what you pay for. A rock tumbler is a machine, not a toy, and is intended for use by or under the supervision of an adult. So choose your communities carefully. Make sure it's one that you feel like you want to make the commitment to, and that there is an adult present somewhere. Not necessarily 24 hours a day. If there's a handful of people who are adults sometimes, that might survive, that might serve as well. But for the Rock Tumbler survival guide, I recommend those 2 things. And then there's not a more beautiful life, not a more beautiful way to spend your life.